Well,
Uh,
hi, everybody. I'm excited to be here. I hope that you got a little bit of a flavor for how radical this whole movement of faith in the workplace is. So I don't want to take a lot of time from our Q&A. The main purpose for this breakout session is to give you an opportunity to interact with us and to ask questions. Any question, there's no holds barred here. Tough questions are welcomed. But I would just want to underscore a couple of points before we dive into the Q&A. And one of them is this, and that is that this is all about authenticity. It's about freeing people to be who they are, to express what's on their hearts, and to connect with one another on a more profound level than perhaps they've ever done before in the workplace. Now, there are a lot of people who think that this is personal. You know, religion is something that's personal and done in the privacy of your church or your own home. It's not something you bring to work. But for many, their faith is what defines them as human beings. And to say that we're into authenticity, that we want people to be themselves when they get to the workplace and not acknowledge the spiritual side of their lives, is disingenuous and counterproductive. So I hope you get a sense that this also relates very importantly to people who do not ascribe to any organized religion, and indeed to those who are atheists and believe that all these beliefs of religious people are myths. How do you connect a person who is passionately believing that a particular God exists and that particular scriptures are the word of God? And how do you connect that person with someone who strongly and passionately believes that that's a total myth, that the other person is living according to a dream and a myth? How do those individuals come together? Well, the fact of the matter is, there are people in those categories and a broad spectrum of categories who are working right alongside you in your workplace. They're not going away. They're going to have those beliefs. And there are ways for those people to connect in common cause and deeper understanding. And when we do that, we see a tremendous outpouring of authenticity. And that is, at its root, I think, certainly one of the major themes that we're all about here: valuing individuals for who they are, telling them they don't need to check their most profound beliefs at the workplace. And in saying that, we're importantly saying something else, and that is that this is not about providing a platform for one religion or 5 religions or any number to dominate, or for atheists to dominate. It's not about one group against another group. What it is about is the individuals, a focus on people. So, so I just wanted to make those general philosophical points, and I'm anxious to welcome questions about how one goes about starting a faith-oriented employee resource group, or perhaps it's a philosophy-oriented employees resource groups. We've seen those as well. I have come up with 9 points, which I don't have time to run through in detail here, but which are covered by the Religious Freedom and Business Foundation training that you heard pitched a little bit earlier by Paul Lambert. And I really want to encourage you to consider that because it's powerful. But let me open it up and ask for questions and just dive right in.
Kent, I'll just kick one off. So at Texas Instruments, it's been really more than 20 years ago that you were part of the initiative to get this started at Texas Instruments. And, you know, maybe just talk a little about what it took. You know, was this just something that, you know, had a great idea one day and it happened the next? You know, what was involved in getting this going?
It was a multi-month, actually it was more than a year in the making. This was back a long time ago in 1990, started in 1999, then 2000, we were still talking about it and wrestling with it. And so I hope it doesn't take that long in your companies. It's now happening a lot more quickly. We were one of the pioneers. In fact, when Texas Instruments started down this road, we thought we were the only one, only Fortune 100 company to do this. It turned out that American Airlines had something similar, and others as well. But it was one of those things that was just kind of kept under wraps and not public. It was quite a process. And one of the points that I make in our list of advice, ideas on how to welcome a faith-oriented diversity in community and ERG kind of organization in the workplace is that we need to begin really with the grassroots. And that's what we did at Texas Instruments. We began with a group of people who were concerned about the company not permitting them to be themselves. The concern was expressed in terms that were very similar to those of the LGBTQ community. People feeling that they had to check their gayness at the door, or their sexual orientation, and the concern was, how do you welcome all of your employees? And that was how we began that dialogue. The dialogue went through management sections. One of these outline points is we need to define processes. You need to begin to connect, not just with the people you know will be allies, although that's important to build up allies at the very beginning, but connect with the people that you have an idea will be concerned about faith in the workplace. Seek them out. Don't wait for them to come after you've gone down the road. I think that was a real lesson that we learned during that multi-month exploration process at Texas Instruments. You know, I'm going to say this. I really feel that what we're talking about with faith in the workplace relates to diversity in a very profound way. It's something that in the workplace is one of the very few places where people of different faiths, different beliefs can come together in common cause and work on a project. And this is happening just all across the world. It's just that people don't know one another's core beliefs and they're ignorant about them, and they haven't been given an opportunity to express those. And when they do have that opportunity, amazing things happen. People begin to really relate on a more profound level.
Yes, good evening. It's Ashida Joel from the United Kingdom. I just want to ask, how would you go about addressing the intersectionality between leadership, identity, and faith within a work environment? Excellent
question. Yes, and this is a question that comes up pretty frequently, especially when you have a manager or a CEO who is passionate about a particular religion. There can be a number of practical and legal concerns that can arise when that person in a position of authority begins to speak about faith. And this is a concern in the United States because we have laws that protect against any environment that would be compulsory, where someone would feel that in order to get ahead in my company, I've got to be religious, one religion or another. Well, this is the opposite of the spirit of diversity that we're talking about here, and that the diversity movement is all about. Very important to set the stage from the very beginning that even if a CEO or a top manager ascribes to a particular set of beliefs, we have to bend over backwards to make clear that we are welcoming all, and that this is not a compulsory, this is not an environment, we will not permit an environment that results in a feeling of compulsion or being in the in group or the out group. Quite to the contrary. So that's one aspect. So there are two basic legal facets of this whole question of freedom of religion in the workplace. And one of them is that you do not want to have an environment which is oppressive to any individual, atheist or otherwise. And the other is freedom of religion, freedom to practice religion. And some faiths, such as, for example, the Muslim faith, call for prayer times at different times of the day. And to have a place where one can go to pray during those times and be uninterrupted and carry out certain ritual practices is very important to many people. Companies are not usually obligated to provide those special places, but when they do, they strengthen goodwill and understanding. So that's an important aspect as well. The two pieces of the legal puzzle, at least in the United States, are those: not having an oppressive environment and yet accommodating religion where it's reasonable to do so. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Good.
Hi, Brian and Kent. Thank you for hosting this conference and this opportunity to dialogue. I have a two-part question, so I hope you don't mind. Alice, I'm calling in from Canada today, so hi, everyone. The first part of the question is about chaplains. You had mentioned in the earlier part that there are some ERGs or faith-based resource groups that have chaplains. Can you speak to perhaps some examples that might also have rabbis or imams, other companies that might have those? And at the same time, if those companies that come to mind, they have them, how does or does not the corporation support the imams, the rabbis, and the chaplains financially, or is it by volunteering basis? What does that usually look like? Thank you.
The companies that have chaplains that I'm aware of are very sensitive to the fact that their employee base includes people of many different religions. So the chaplains are equipped to aid Muslims and Jews, Hindus and Buddhists, and to respect their faiths. And in several of these, like the armed forces, they'll have imams and rabbis on staff and they'll be involved, they'll be compensated. Now, Brian, do you have something to add there?
Yeah, I'll say a couple things, and then we have a chaplain on board today. I'll ask Father Greg to say a couple words from American Airlines. So one of the interesting developments is the combination of chaplains with employee resource groups. So I know that Intel in Costa Rica is moving to hiring a chaplain, as well as having employee resource groups that are faith oriented. So I think that's, I don't know if you can call it cutting edge kind of stuff, but I don't think that's a typical model. But having said that, let me just let Father Greg McBrayer from American Airlines, who's a chaplain and their chief flight controller and the head of their EBRG. So in one person, you combine a lot of those roles. So Father Greg.
Hi, Brian, and hi, Kent, and welcome everyone this afternoon. Yeah, it's a very unique role at American Airlines. I've been in the airline industry for over 40 years and was ordained into ministry 20 years ago around the 9/11 event. And that's really when faith really took roots differently at US Airways. I was working in the flight control center there, and really my chaplaincy role evolved around the event of 9/11. And it fully blossomed as EBRGs continued to grow in the corporate setting. It existed, behind closed doors for the most part, at that time in Bible studies and things like that. But as it continued to grow, my role within the company, even though I'm a flight controller by profession, evolved into my ministry role and a chaplaincy role, evolving in the workspace. And the companies saw fruit in that. They saw a value in that was something they could have available to them if needed. Employees reached out into that need through the 9/11 event and many other life events that we do. At least in the aviation world, we are much like the military or first responders. We work all holidays and we work shift work and things like that. So our lives really evolve and we do life together. And it really promoted the need for a chaplaincy type role to evolve with it. And so, like the military, it was embraced there. My profession is I'm a flight controller, and then that's what American Airlines pays me at American to do. But I do ministry work, and I'm at work right now, so I'm stepping in my office right now. But a lot of it is ministry related, and ironically, it does branch out further than that. It really comes down to caring for people in life's needs at that moment, and they see people of faith is a body of people that can help one another in a time of need. And I saw it happen at 9/11. I've seen it happen through aircraft incidents and events in a 40-year career, and it continues to happen. At American, we have very active EBRGs, and we have all the major faith-based groups recognized here, and have very active groups. And we actually do 3 events a year, or quarterly usually, where we would gather and we would do what we call Abraham's 10 events. And really it evolves around the 3 Abrahamic faiths, the Christian, Jewish, and Muslim faiths. And we would gather to do a lunch and learn type event where we would bring a representative from each faith-based group in, which would be myself usually for the Christian group, but we would bring an imam in and a rabbi, and we would let American Airlines employees come up with a topic that we were going to discuss with them from a faith-based perspective. For example, one of the topics was the afterlife. So the 3 of us as clerics would come in and we talk to a large gathering of people about how we view the afterlife in our faith, and it would better educate everyone there about how to understand the people around them better, and really gave them the opportunity to better know the people in their workspace that were of a different faith. And after each of us would do a 15 or 20-minute presentation, we do questions and answers. And it was really it still is a very effective way to have representatives from the faith-based leaders in their community to come in, and we would bring them in from the other faith 2 groups and discuss the understanding of those around us better, which created, like I said, a healthy workspace and a better understanding. It just bonds people together and brings down barriers and silos that exist and the unknowns of the people of faith around us. And it has become one of our most effective EBRG events at American Airlines. And it continues to go forward today, even though it's working in a virtual setting, but it was really fun when we could do it in person and gather and have lunch around it and things like that in about an hour event. It's been very, very life-giving, I think, for many to better understand those around them. But that is a couple of the roles that we see and how that it broadens out within American Airlines today.
Father Greg, thank you so much. One of the things I really loved about what you just said is we do life together. And think about that at work in a very profound sense. We are doing life together, and we're doing it with people who have various different faiths. And this is a way that we can care about one another by connecting. Awesome.
So we probably have time for one more question before we head back into the main plenary session again. Richard?
Yes. And thank you, Kent. Good to see you. I have a question. I realize the model is to have accommodation done because it's good practice and good policy, as opposed to having to deal with the legal side of it. But at the same time, and you've already alluded to this, we have laws in the United States that require accommodation. I wonder, first of all, to what extent that's part of your training, is to acclimate employers as to what the law requires of them. And also, do you find, the law is in flux somewhat. There's a case coming, we hope, before the Supreme Court not too long a time, which may re-explore what the standards should be in terms of religious accommodation. But right now, there are many advocates who feel that the standards are not really sufficiently protective of employees in getting the accommodations they need. Do you find that to be an issue that you have to deal with in your training and in your explaining these?
Yes, Richard, thanks for the question. It's a good one. Our training does not spend a lot of time on the legal parameters for this reason. Our advocacy is that companies are well advised to go far beyond the accommodation which is strictly required by law. What's strictly required by law can be a check the box thing that does not entail a recognition of people's faith and their faith identity by any stretch. The law is a bare minimum requirement. And it doesn't get us very far down the road of diversity. So yeah, that certainly we have, I'm a lawyer by trade, and I know what the laws are, and we do have some interesting cases coming up. My concern in the legal arena has been this, that people tend to presume all too often that speaking about religious liberty is really a code word to promote a particular religion, when in actuality, the heart of the people who are involved in religious liberty is religious liberty for all, including for atheists. So the religious liberty arena, the courtroom activities, the nuances that are being probed by different courts is not a major subject of our training. We want to help management embrace religious diversity because it's the right thing to do and because their employees are going to be happier and better relating to one another on a more profound level, and recruitment will be enhanced, and all these other factors that should cause people to go far beyond what's strictly legally required.
Yeah, I would just add basic laws and introduce that in the training. But most of the companies that request the training are not looking for, they haven't been asking, tell us about the laws, but more, how do we better accommodate people work? How do we navigate this issue in ways that are fair? So our training is developed not from where we imagine what people would want, but more designing things what people are asking for. So if they would, then if that would be an interest, we could provide much more in depth with, and of course drawing on people like you, Richard, and from your background. And I think if this Supreme Court case you mentioned is heard, is taken up, and they decide favorably, then accommodation will become a higher expectation for companies. And then I think in that case, there would be a new round of interest in companies better understanding what that means. I don't know if it was Ahmed, were you going to ask a question? So I think Ahmed is typing.
So just the basics of religion. So Ahmed is suggesting basics of religions for better service and best for team and company. Knowledge about other people's faith is hugely, hugely important. And what we found, our foundation has found with many companies, is that to invite people of different faiths to talk about how their faith impacts their work is a hugely helpful thing as well. But yes, certainly a curriculum that would tell people. So many people have preconceived ideas that are wrong about other faiths. It's much better to allow people to speak who have those faiths. So just a few comments on that. And thank you for that suggestion.
There's different ministries or companies out there. One that we've worked with is the Productive Muslim Company.
Yes.
Mohammed Faris leads that. And so he brings, just like there's Christian groups that do the same, different faith groups, bring their religious teaching to the workplace. And so there's a lot of room for that. So with that, I want to thank Kent and Father Greg. We sort of drafted you on the last minute.
Yeah, thanks, Father Greg.
And everyone, thank you for participating. And we look forward to joining everybody just back in the closing plenary